Hey guys, you're welcome back to my channel today. Thank you so much for stopping by. In my last video, we drafted out a pattern for this Victorian corset blouse. In this particular video, we are going to be sewing the blouse. So if you've not seen the pattern drafting video, I'm going to leave the link in the comment section, so go ahead and watch it before you come join us on this particular tutorial. So I went ahead to add 1 inch as my stitching allowance on the sides, on the up, and on the down I increased my top by 2 inches. So you can see that I used my chalk so that you guys can see what I did. So after cutting out, guys, this is what I have. The 1 inch that I left all the way around is what I'm going to use as my stitching allowance. I'm also going to use it to create my boning casing. I also went ahead to cut my lining and the main fabric together, and I ironed gum stay to the fabric. So I'll advise that if you have air stay, use air stay instead of gum stay. So I opened up my number 1, which is the center front. Make sure it's on fold. I'm also going to remove the pins on number 2, and I'm going to place them right sides facing each other. So be careful so you don't pin the wrong piece together. So I'm placing number 2 on number 1 on both sides. Don't forget that your number 1 should be on fold. So after pinning, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sew. So remember, I left 1 inch all the way around, so I'm going to sew with 1 inch. I'm also going to repeat the same process for the lining piece. So like I said before, I made sure that I cut out the lining piece the same way I cut out my fabric. So whatever I do for the main piece, I'm also going to do for the lining piece. So guys, I've gone ahead to sew. You can see my chalk. I had to use my chalk to make sure that I'm sewing 1 inch all the way to the end, and I repeated the same thing for the lining piece. The next thing I'll do is to bring my number 3. I'm going to remove the lining and I'm going to keep the main fabric. So I'm going to pin number 3 to number 2, right sides facing each other. So if you don't understand, just look at what I am doing. So I'm going to pin from the down to the up, and I'm also going to pin the other one. So after pinning, guys, I'm also going to use the 1 inch that I left as my stitching and boning allowance. I'll make sure I use my chalk, so make sure you mark it so you know what you're doing. I'm also going to pin my lining piece together, and I'm going to sew in with the 1 inch also. So guys, after stitching, this is what I have. So you can see how it looks on the inside. I made sure that I used 1 inch to sew all the way to the end, and this is what I have. I also repeated the same process for the lining piece. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create a channel for my boning. So I'm going to go ahead and use my tailor's arm to iron all these allowance. I'm going to iron it. Just look at the way I'm doing it. I'm going to open it up and I'll iron. After ironing, I'm going to run a straight stitch on the allowance. So it depends on how wide your boning is. So the boning I'll be using is just half an inch, so I'm going to use my chalk to mark half an inch on a straight line, and I'll create my boning casing. So I'm going to create two boning casing on each joining allowance. So if you don't understand, I'm going to show you guys what I mean by the time I'm done stitching. So guys, after stitching, this is what I have for the front. You can see that I used my chalk to mark half an inch, which is the size of the boning I'll be using. So this is what it looks like on the outside. I have 2 stitches on each joining, so altogether I have like 8 boning casing for the front. So go ahead and start joining the back. So for the back, all the piece for the back looks the same. So if you have to label so that you know which goes where. So first of all, I'm going to open up number 1, which is the part that has my center back. I'm going to make sure I label so I know what I am doing. I'm going to remove my lining. this is number 1. The center back is facing each other. I'm going to remove the pins for number 2 also, and I'm going to place number 2 on the side just like this. So all these pieces look the same, so you have to be careful so you know which goes where. After doing that, I'm also going to open up number 3. So if you have to label, go ahead and label so that you not get confused. If you want to notch, also go ahead and notch. I'm also going to remove the pattern paper for the for number 3, and I'm going to place them on the sides like this. And whatever you do for the main piece, make sure you do the same thing for the lining piece. So what I'm going to do is to place them on each other like this, right sides facing each other, and then I'll go ahead and stitch. I'll repeat the same thing for my lining piece. After pinning, I'll go ahead and sew. So don't forget you'll be using the 1-inch stitching allowance that we left, just like we did for the front. I'm going to go ahead and use my chalk to mark 1 inch from the beginning to the end. After sewing, this is what I have. So the next thing I will do is to create my boning casing. So we are going to repeat the same thing that we did for the front. I'm going to go ahead and iron this allowance flat. After ironing, I'm going to now create my boning casing by sewing on a straight line. The wideness of my boning is 1/2 inch, so I'm going to use my chalk to mark 1/2 inch from the beginning to the end, and then I'll go ahead and stitch. So guys, after doing that, this is what I have. So guys, the next thing I did was to create my loop. Like I said in the pattern drafting video, I'm not going to be adding zip to this blouse. So I didn't do this on camera because I have a full video on how to create your loop and also how to cut and sew a modesty panel. I'm going to leave the link in the comment section. I did this off camera to save time. So guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to bring back my front piece, and I'm going to place the back piece on the front piece, and I'll be using my allowance to join it. So I left 1 inch allowance while I was cutting on my fabric, and I also left another 1 inch allowance while I was drafting. So I used the 2 inches allowance to join the front and the back piece together. So after sewing, guys, this is what I have. And like I said before, whatever you do for the main fabric, make sure you do it for the lining piece. So this is my lining piece. I'm going to pin the lining piece on the main piece, just like you see me doing. After pinning, I'm going to bring in my modesty panel. So yes, I went ahead to cut out a modesty panel. I have a full tutorial, it's very detailed. I'm going to leave the link in the comment section, so in case you don't know how to do this, go ahead and watch the video. So I'm going to place my modesty panel on the back piece like this. So I left 1/2 inch on the base and 1/2 inch on the upper part, which I'm going to be using to join my lining to the main fabric. So the modesty panel is 1 inch shorter than my blouse. So I'm going to pin the open side of the modesty panel on the loop area like this. So after sewing, that's how it's going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and pin my lining and the main fabric together. I'm just going to pin the upper area and the loop area. I'm not going to pin the base for now. So after pinning all the way around, I'm going to go ahead and sew. So guys, after sewing, you can go ahead and top stitch towards the lining. After doing that, I'm going to go ahead and notch all the way around. After notching, I'm going to turn everything inside out. So guys, after doing that, this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to do before I iron is to pass my boning through the channels. So what I'm going to do is to measure my blouse. Your boning should be 1 inch or half an inch shorter than your blouse, because the 1 inch or the half an inch that you'll be leaving on the base is what you are going to use to sew your lining to your fabric. I already went ahead to measure my blouse, and I already know the length of the boning that I'll be needing. So I'm going to go ahead and pass my boning through all these boning casing that I created. So make sure that the channel that you'll be creating for your boning is wide enough for your boning to pass through. So before creating the channel, measure your boning so you know the wideness, so you know how much allowance you'll be leaving for your boning. So after passing my boning through all these channels, guys, this is what I have. You can see that the blouse is standing, so which is okay. You're supposed to iron so that the boning will stay flat. What I'm going to do is to turn my blouse over to the wrong side, and I'm going to pin the base. So I'm going to pin the lining and the main piece together. After doing that, guys, I'll go ahead and stitch, and then I'm going to open one side of my lining piece so that I'll use it to turn everything inside out by the time I'm done sewing. So guys, after sewing the base, I went ahead to turn it over to the right side using the opening that I left on the lining. I didn't do this on camera because it was a bit difficult to turn it inside out because of all the boning that I've already inserted in the blouse. So the next thing I'm going to do is to close up this opening on the lining piece. So after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and give this blouse a good press so that the boning and everything is going to lay flat. The last thing I'll do is to cut out a rope that I'll be using to lace my loop, so the rope can be as long as you want it. And yeah guys, that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. Please don't forget to like, comment if you have any questions, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.